Hi, this is Rahim Zulfikar Ali from excelbasement.org. Today in this screencast, I will discuss one of the query which is received by one of our very good client, Wärtsilä, and Asan sent this query to Sharjeel, and all the logics has been created by Sharjeel Ghalib. I will explain all these logics included in this worksheet and the functions which has been added by the Sharjeel to provide the solution to SN. So I will explain them one by one. The query was both sheets contain one identical column, name identical column. As you can see in master sheet, the column C contains the identical column, as well as in the gap sheet worksheet, column C contains the identical column. Further he write, now the query is that gap sheet contains different training names. Okay, gap sheets contain different training names in the column D. One name may contain 4 or 5 or maybe more trainings. Now I want to separate each training in front of every name. So let's suppose Mahmood Khalid is competence in more than one skill. So Hassan needs that in front of the Mahmood Khalid, if he is competence in more than one skill, so it should write in separate cells in front of that name. Next he wrote, now I want to separate each training in front of every name. Please help me in this regard as soon as possible. Prior thanks. So regarding that, first of all, the very quick solution without formula is approach to build a pivot table. So making a pivot table, you have to select these 3 columns, and then you have to go to insert, and here you can insert the pivot table, and you will find a pivot table in a new sheet. You can change the layout as well, classic pivot table layout, and you can just drop down the identical numbers and then competencies according to them. So you will find that this identical number 1001982 contains 4 different competencies. So this is one of the solution, but let me explain you how we can use very common functions and extract the solution. So let me just delete this worksheet. So let me discuss the formula. What Sharjeel did is he created a summary sheet, and here he just compiled the data with the identical column, employee codes, names, designation and location according to the identical column, okay, from the master sheet. Now the logic is the identical number. Let me just unfilter it. Okay, the identical number, let's say let me pick any identical number from here. So Bajwa Umar Abdullah has 3 competencies, and he has one identical number, that is 1001970. okay, and Bajwa Umar Abdullah has 3 competencies. So we have to create one of the logic that in front of this name we can have all 3 competencies like in the different columns, okay, not in the different rows. So what Sharjeel did is, before the identical column he inserted 2 different columns, 2 different blank columns, one for the combo and the other for the count. Now he just created a logic with the COUNTIF function. So let me just explain you first of all what COUNTIF function is doing by generating the serial numbers here. So the first of all, we have used COUNTIF. Let's say I have some random numbers 10, 10, and it's repeating again, 20, 10 again, 20, 35, 10, 20. Okay, and I will use COUNTIF function to generate a incremental number every time, and for the same numbers it will give me a different incremental number. So starting with equals to COUNTIF, the range, and then criteria, and I will make the first cell reference relative into absolute by pressing F4. Okay, pressing enter and copy and paste downwards. Okay, so for the first 10 number it gives me 1, for the second 10 it's repeating, it's give me 2, increment of 1, for the third 10 it gives me 3, for the fourth 10 in the data it gives me 4, for the fifth 10 in the data in the list of these numbers it gives me 5. Every time it gives me a different number, a different serial number, generating increment by 1. For the first 20 it gives me 1, for the second 20 it gives me 2, for the third 20 it gives me 3, likewise for the different numbers. So we have used the COUNTIF logic. Okay, and what it does is, for the first cell it always gives you 1, for the second it's make the absolute the first cell and then moving downwards to this range, and then checks in the criteria that it exactly matches and gives a different number. Okay, so in the gap sheet he uses the COUNTIF function, and every time if this number repeats in the list here, it gives 2, 3, 4 and so on, increment by 1. Then he inserted another column and he just joined these two cells. So we have ampersand sign in Excel, or we can use concatenate to join more than 2 text strings. Okay, so to make a combo of these two cells, he uses the concatenate function, equals to concatenate. First in text 1 he uses C3 and then B3. So it makes you can say this list is a primary list with a unique identical numbers every time. Okay, and we have just generated a primary list for these competencies according to their employee names. Okay, and we will use in this VLOOKUP. So for the gap sheet we have used the COUNTIF function to generate the new numbers every time if the number is repeating again by the incremental of 1, and then combo of these two numbers. Okay, let's move toward the summary sheet and the final conclusion of this screencast. What Shajil did is he uses two functions, IFERROR and VLOOKUP, and you know these two functions are the most common functions. VLOOKUP has been learned by many of the Excel users now, and this is very common function. VLOOKUP, what VLOOKUP does is generally it fetch out the desired outcome from your database, it fetch the results, and it's to be noted that VLOOKUP gives you the transactional or unique transaction data, fetches out data. It ignores the duplication all. Basically it does not generate the duplicate results, because it's a reference function, and VLOOKUPs all the condition is to apply the VLOOKUP function your database should be an identical or the transactional, does not repeat any row again and again, because it will pick the first most appropriate search for you and then gives you the result accordingly. Well, let's discuss the VLOOKUP here. It's very simple. VLOOKUP, in lookup value syntax we have made two cell references here, joining with the ampersand sign. B column consists of the identical columns, remember in the gap sheet, right? So the identical numbers in the column B, and then ampersand to join with the G1 H1 and I1. This row, this first row consists of some numbers, is a serial number 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 and then so on. Numbers of depend on number of trainings a person is a competence in their skills. So it's an serial number. Okay, why we have used this row for this serial number is basically in the gap sheet we have generated a serial number for the identical column. Okay, so for lookup value, if we just have a b3 and not the g1, we cannot make a simple lookup based on our this combo column, and we cannot fetch the result from the column D. So in the summary sheet, we will start with the VLOOKUP b3 and g1 for the one. If this identical number is repeating again, so the training 2 will be searched and in that the gap sheet, okay, and will give me the combo of this number from the gap sheet column A. So if you know that how to use the VLOOKUP, you will simply understand this logic that VLOOKUP lookup value is the same as in the gap sheet column A. Okay, we are not based on the column C for the identical column, we are now based on the combo. Okay, then the table array, which is your source of your database in the gap sheet from column A till H. Okay, sometimes you will find that A1 till H 5000, but here this means that the whole column has been selected with an absolute. So column A till column H, whole column has been selected. Okay, then column index number from where we have to fetch the output is 4. Now going again to the gap sheet, and here we have to fetch the results from the column D, and column D is the 4th column in Excel. So we have put the 4 here, and for the false, because it's the exactly match with combination of this and this two numbers, which is right here in the column A of the gap sheet combo. Okay, similarly this and this combo is included in the gap sheet of column A. So we are looking up with these numbers, not with these numbers. Okay, and why we have used the if error? Because if we don't use if error, then if VLOOKUP doesn't find any data according to these identical numbers, so it will gives you a Excel error, and to hide that Excel error we have used the if error function. Okay, another quick method, instead of using this helper raw, basically helper row and helper columns sometimes makes our queries very easier to build and very helpful, but instead of using these serial numbers, we can generate this serial number within our formula by using the column function. Let me just explain you how column function works. Equals to column A1 bracket close, and then copy and paste toward the right side. So B1, C1, D1. Okay, so column A always gives you the number 1 by using the column function. B1, because column B is the second column in the Excel spreadsheet, column C is the third. So this gives me an incremental of 1, like serial number that Sergil has just used this row 1 in this helper as an helper row. So I can use instead of G1 here, I can use this column function. Okay, and the good way is that if you copy and paste it downwards, it will still gives you 1. So you don't have to confuse in making absolute and relative cell references here. Sometimes you might get confused in the mix reference, and most of the people get confused in the mix reference, that which row or which column we have to make absolute and which column and row we have to make relative. So by using the column function, you don't have to care about the relative and absolute, you just have the serial numbers likewise. So I will edit this formula, and instead of G1 I will write column A1. That's it. Enter, copy and paste spatial, and pasting the formulas, copy and pasting the formulas from the paste spatial. The shortcut key is Alt ES, and select formulas. Okay, and you just get your desired outcome. Now you don't have to use this helper row, you can delete these serial number from here. Still your formula works with the help of a column function. Okay, So I hope that Asan, you have understand that how this logic has been created. If you have further queries, do write in the comment box. Thank you.